and welcome to the Remember Me podcast. I'm Maria.
And I'm Rachel.
And we're your hosts.
And we're very happy you're here with us today.
Remember Me is dedicated to preserving the memories of those affected by dementia and the families walking alongside them.
We've created this space for you to feel more connected and supported.
And we hope these stories allow for a deeper understanding and a sense of belonging.
And to shine a light on our motto, accept the good.
Always, always accept the good.
This is Remember Me.
Today, we are here with, I'm going to say longtime listener, friend of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We finally got him on. Our friend, Shane. Welcome, Shane, to Remember Me podcast.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
We got to twist his arm a little
bit. No, we said we think this would be a great season.
I said
great.
We can't do the spouse season.
Okay, all right. No
without
pressure.
Shane.
No pressure.
So today we're going to talk about Faye and her long journey with FTD and your long journey for answers, but I don't want to tell the story. We're going to have you tell the story. So why don't you just start by telling our listeners what was the first sign that something wasn't quite right with Faye?
I used to think it was physical symptoms that erupted in June of 2007. But as I've retrospectively looked back, there was a moment when Faye we had just started a brand new State Farm agency, and Faye was working in the business because we started from scratch. We didn't have any clients. And so it was kind of our family farm. And about a year and few months in, she walked into my office one day and she said, "I'm not doing this anymore. I'm leaving." And I felt a little bit abandoned in the moment and said, "But this is the family farm. This is how we pay our bills. This is how we eat." And she just looked back at me and said, "I don't care if we go bankrupt. I don't care. I'm not doing this anymore." And she walked out. And at the time I interpreted it as she doesn't care about me. But I understand now that there was probably a certain terror entering her, experience where she couldn't follow sequences and directions. And in the context of that, if she had an upset customer or something, it just really overwhelmed her.
Yes.
And then there was a hallucination event in 2006 where she woke me up in the middle of the night and she said, Shane, there was this spirit, this man hovering over you, and he was looking into your face like he was trying to read your brain, your thoughts." And, that's an interesting way to wake up.
Wow.
And we had a lot of spiritual interpretations, and any kind of unexplainable event that fell outside of our normal daily routine often got dropped into that bucket.
This was something spiritual, or is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, what? It was like, okay, well, let's go back.
God's giving us a message or something like that.
Well, for me, it was a little bit more like, what the HE double hockey stick was that? How do I interpret that? What do I even do with it? I laid there for a long time that night, just trying to digest what she said. And she'd had a lot of experiences like that in her life that she'd never had first person with me until that night. And so at the time, I just dropped it in this must be a spiritual gift she has that I don't have. And we'll just let it go at that. I don't know how to interpret it. But now in the context of it, my oldest son is a neuroscientist with a PhD that works at University of Pitt. And we've talked a lot about that. And it could have been, one of a visual hallucination. It could have been part of the early phase of her brain disease. And we'll never know. But those two events kind of lead up to real physical symptoms that occurred in June of 2007, where she was bedridden for 2 or 3, 4 days at a time on about three events over a 1-month span. And she described to me a dullness and a numbness in her brain that she brilliantly described as mind nausea. And at the time, I didn't know what to make of that, right? She's having sensations, physical feelings, and it's dulling her. And she says she can't think correctly. and she just wants to withdraw and stay in bed and kind of hide from all this and try to wait it out, right?
Sure. So
And I
she
think,
knew something wasn't.
oh,
She knew
yes,
something was going on.
How scary for her.
Could you
yeah,
imagine? And not being able to like articulate and explain, like, I feel this, or it's like, I just want to hide. Oh, okay.
But I also feel like that's a testament to your marriage, that she felt like she could just lay that all out for you and say, like,
help.
I want you
Yeah.
in here to like help me through this.
How
right.
scary.
And so what did you tell her? Did you think you're depressed? You know,
Right. What was
how
the
did you
next step?
explain it? Yeah.
Well, that opened the door to an aggressive decade of searching for answers. So we began to see doctors, endocrinologists, neurologists. She was in her 40s, so perimenopause, menopause, all of those things kind of came into the narrative, and certainly depression was a big part of that early conversation. There began to be physical manifestations those first 5 years. There were brain zaps that she described as these electrical charges that went from her up through her sinus, up through the middle of her forehead. And she also would occasionally have these myoclonic seizures where her arms would jerk, and I would hold her hand and literally feel. And those weren't real common, but they were occurring, every few months or so.
And
So they were, yeah, go ahead.
It feels like, I don't know if I've ever heard of FTD present in this way with like the somatic.
Yeah.
Right? Like we usually hear like they wandered off. They didn't care about the family. They did that.
But he's physically seeing.
Like, and the jerking and the wanting to lay down, and she's able to explain like what it feels like.
Yeah, she's explaining it.
Is there any part of you that's like, what?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you think you could see it? So you believed her?
Well, absolutely.
I mean, my husband looks at me like, you're so nuts, when I'm like, it's perimenopause. He's like, what do we give you for this? Like, I know that feeling of just like, my skin is itchy. Like, you just want to escape. But this felt deeper than that. The bed and all of that stuff. Like, and it feels.
Yes. And when you start this journey of all these different specialists, are they giving you answers, or are they like, we don't have the answer, go to the next person? Like, how did the chain of doctors, how did that go?
A little of both. I mean, we started fairly early in the neurology phase, and unfortunately our area has really poor neurological care. And the first neurologist we went to ordered an MRI, and he never looked at it before we made it to our second appointment, but I did. I got the CD with all the images, and so I studied them. There was some white matter things going on, and I came prepared with lots of questions. And when we arrived and I started to question him, he eventually he admitted, hey, I haven't looked at the MRI. And I said, why would you order a $4,000 test if you're not going to look at it? And he said, well, we can do it right now. So we walked around the corner into a room where he had an iMac, and we plugged the CD in, and we began to briefly look at the images. And, he said, well, there's a certain amount of white matter disease that's normal for a woman her age. And, he kind of passed it off. And then he said, my thought is that she's had an unknown virus go in her brain. And there's a lot of things we just don't know about the brain. And it's very likely that she's had an unknown virus go in her brain. And that's causing these issues. And sometimes that virus resolves, and sometimes it never goes away, which kind of, left us with a, what the hell, excuse me.
Feels like the movie Outbreak.
What do I do with that?
Like they get bit by the monkey and they're crazy. Like,
yes.
And a
what
virus?
Are you supposed to do with that information?
Like, thanks, Doc.
I have heard that out of some physicians' mouths. There's just some things we don't know about the body or about the brain. And you're like, oh, okay, but what do I do now?
Then send me to somebody who knows. Right.
So how are we supposed to live? And I think this would be a good time too to set the stage of your family. How many children do you have?
What year? How?
Yeah.
So in 2007 we had 6 children.
Yeah.
2 were emancipated. One was on his college and PhD journey, and the other one was taking nursing classes, my two oldest. And then the other three were in various stages of, we had two teenagers and two children. So broad spectrum, right? And my two teenagers, one was getting ready to go on an LDS mission, and my daughter, Brittany, who we'll talk about a lot in this session, was really struggling with some health issues, kind of conducive to being a woman and being an adolescent. She was having really bad migraines, and that was concurrent with the onset of Faye's disease, and that'll be part of the story later as we talk. And then we had two boys that were 8 and 10, or 7 and 9, somewhere in that range, in elementary school, and that kind of sets the stage, if you will, for where we were at with them.
So she's me.
Well, I'm just like
plus
Shane's looking at this doctor that's like, sure, let's just put in the CD and look at it together. Like, no, this is your wife. This is a mother in her 40s with 6 kids. Like, we can't just like go home and be like,
we don't know.
Cool. We don't know things about the brain. So what did you do next when he's looking at you?
And also, is Faye like,
like is she nervous? What is she saying?
Yeah.
I kind of process my thoughts outward. Faye is an introvert. She went inward, which coupled with anosognosia made our journey really difficult. So I became the chief catalyst for her going to doctors, and she was very compliant early on, and we went to doctor after doctor after doctor, which a lot of the doctors, I wasn't there for the visit because I've always been working, a single income family,
Mm-hmm.
So she would go, and then she would come back and reflect with me, and we would try different medications, and slowly, there were over 400 doctor, psychiatric. I mean, she had 105 psychiatric visits and evaluations. She had 40 neurofeedback treatments. We had marriage therapy. There was over 400 appointments. And between 2007 and 2019, when we learned about FTD from the 60 Minutes segment, and none of those doctors ever talked about a potential degenerative brain condition. There were 4 different neurologists. There was early on, we kind of got stuck in a mode where we thought it was a rare form of epilepsy, which kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah. Because of like some of this physical. Wait. I don't think I knew this part. So was it watching the 60 Minutes that triggered like, okay, I'm going to take this to a doctor because that sounds like it could be it?
And that was 10 years later?
Over
12 years later. Well, so can I answer that question in the context of our conversation?
Yes.
Because a lot happened in between.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I'm just like, what? Okay, go, please.
Also the psyche
Yeah.
valves. And the neurofeedback. Okay.
Yeah. So I like to say that from 2007 to 2012, 13-ish, Faye went to a lot of doctors, and we tried a lot of medications. And what happened as her symptoms became more and more severe, she began to slowly start to overuse and abuse prescription medications. She was, internally, she's becoming more and more desperate to find something that can make her feel okay or normal, or make her head sensations and thoughts and feelings kind of normalize, and none of it's working. This is my interpretation looking backwards. And by 2013, 14, anosognosia has really taken over. And then she kind of loses any self-advocacy or desire to go see doctors. I'm fine, as she's clearly not fine, and as her behavior and those elements are spinning out of control. So I kind of shifted into the role of the catalyst, the person leading the charge, trying to find answers. I read a lot of books. I went to the NAMI peer-to-peer class on mental illness, where we went through the 30 most common mental illnesses in the DSM-5. I attended help groups looking for something that looked like what Faye was experiencing, and I couldn't find it. It was a long, long journey.
And
And
is she, minus the anastagnasia, is she extremely behavioral? Is she wandering? How is she as a mother? Like, what's going on in the home? Like, there's,
so
I
in that,
think you're a great parent, but there's nothing like a mama. Like, what is
no,
she able to parent the little boys at home? Like, what is her, what is she experience? I know you don't know, but what does it look like?
she's withdrawing. She's becoming
Mm.
disconnected. She's the apathy and the loss of, the hidden part of this is Faye is losing her ability to understand words and read body language. And so over that first 5 years, she's just slowly eroding and disconnecting from us. And it's so subtle that it looks and feels like she just doesn't care. But she's still driving. She's still engaged in doing things. For a while, she was cleaning homes to earn extra money, but she is more and more withdrawing from the the responsibilities in our home, with our children, at church. All of the things that she was engaged in are just going away, and our children are noticing it as she doesn't have any interest in me, with exception of Brittany. And Brittany at 15 had been prescribed Vicodin for migraine headaches 2005, and
Oh,
developed almost an immediate addiction to opiate medications.
oh no.
So this kind of becomes intertwined, these two realities, Faye's kind of unknown
Yeah.
FTD and Brittany's addictions, and they're together seeking medications more and more, and overusing them, and sharing medications between each other. And I'm on the outside trying to stop it. I'm trying to slow it down. I'm
Of course,
trying
yeah.
to talk to Faye about the damage that this could potentially do to Brittany. And I will just say that the two of them went to 5 different residential rehab stays, where you go in for 30,
Mhm.
45, 60 days. And I made them go. I mean, that's just a really
Yeah,
terrible,
what else are you going to do? You think that's what it is. Of course, yeah, well, this is help. This is helpful.
in the context. I feel so terrible about that.
Of course. Yeah,
Um,
Maria always tells me you did the best you could with the information you had. You
and
didn't
bad
know.
information can do damage.
Ye-
And I did some damaging things. I mean, I remember the first time I required her to go was in 2014. And our family, my older children had kind of, with me together, we've kind of galvanized this narrative that Faye is a prescription drug addict, right?
Mm.
That's kind of comes into a clear view based on her.
Hmm.
She becomes solely focused on getting medications. She lives her life in that arena. And she takes our youngest daughter with her. And so, the obvious solution seems to be to get treatment for that.
Absolutely.
But the
Yes.
treatment doesn't help. The behavior doesn't change. And I remember sitting in a church parking lot. I drove her there because I had written this letter that I wanted to read, where I poured out my heart about how she's seemingly doesn't care about the kids and I, and I just really need her to get help. And it's breaking my heart. This is the first time she went, and she just kind of reads it and says, "Okay, I'll go." And I wish we would have known what was happening.
How could you have known?
Yeah, if you knew, you would have done.
Yeah,
The plan would
but
have been diverted.
but I still have to own that,
Yes, of course.
I still
Right.
have to own that, and it's what makes the behavioral variant of FTD so terrible,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we're living without understanding what's going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, took the NAMI class. There was another event, went to marriage counseling. Wonderful, seasoned 60 something woman who really knew her stuff. And we went to two, and Faye seemed to connect with her. And then the third time, Faye didn't show up. And I called her and I said on the cell phone, I'm here. We're at the, and she said, oh, I can't come today. I need to help Brittany pass out resumes. And they were really actually seeking medication, you know. So that happened again. And then the third time, Taffy, I think was the counselor's name, she looked at me and she said, Shane, I'm I'm not an individual therapist. I'm a marriage therapist. And if Faye isn't going to come, there's nothing I can do. And at this point, it's like 2015, 2016, and now there are years of this, and it's degrading, and I'm feeling less, less and less able, and more kind of emptied out. And I said, what do I do? And she said, Shane, Faye has this enormous wall of public facing shame, and it's all performative. And behind it, there's just nothing there. There's no fire. There's no thought process. And of course, what a telling comment, right? Without knowing about
pretty
FTD.
foreboding.
Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what to do with it.
Right.
I said, what do I do? And she said, I'm sorry, I don't know. And I remember leaving that appointment feeling just completely hollowed out. Like, I don't know what to do. I've been working at this for almost a decade, and I don't know where to turn for help. The doctors Faye had a 7-day hospital stay where they put EEG things on her head and monitored her brain activity. And that was a different neurologist. And he said, and at the time I was making CBD oil capsules, to help Faye because Faye was convinced that if she just took these, that it was epilepsy and her brain would be, it would help. And she was convinced it would help her, but I didn't see any changes. And my daughter, Jordan, who is such a central figure, 2016, Faye and I are visiting, and Faye could not sit. By then, she can't sit still. She's constantly moving. And that was one of the most prominent presentments of her FTD, is she had to get up and go.
The pace.
And so by then she's driving 5,000 or 6,000 miles per month. And so we're visiting my daughter. Faye gets in the van and takes off like she would do all day long. And Jordan goes for a walk with me. And we're walking around the corner from her apartment at the time, and she has a little baby, Gracie. And she turns and she grabs my shoulders and she looks at me, and with tears, crying, Daddy, whatever's happening to Mom, don't let it destroy you too. And then there was a series of those kinds of conversations with my different children, all beginning to advocate for me, because they saw how this whole series of events and experiences was degrading me. And I was just running out of capacity. I didn't know what to do. And Faye was just being the FTD brained Faye. She'd lost her impulse control. She would say what she thought, which, if most of us have experienced that. So you're in a grocery store and you're in the line.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, lady wearing? Yeah. And
you're like looking at them like, catch my social cue.
Yeah.
You were children of FTD. So I think we're Jordan and Brittany and the rest of your kids in this situation. Yeah. But as a spouse, you're two hands full of years into this. Are you mad? Are you resentful? Are you scared?
Burnt out?
Are you like, what's going through your head? You're searching for answers, yes. But the relationship, Are you mad at her? Are you scared? Are you sad? Sad, yes, I'm sure. But what's going on internally?
I'm broken. I'm hollowed out. I'm past anger. Faye, the thing I haven't been able to say is Faye and I both came from very trauma-intense childhoods. Me in Alaska, her in Massachusetts. There was a lot of brokenness and abandonment in both of our lives, with, a lot of issues: mental illness, alcoholism, a lot of things flavored our paths, and Faye and I were both raised by our respective grandparents,
Okay.
ultimately. And nobody ever loved me like Faye. I couldn't weather it. I couldn't weather the loss of this person who was my person. Um, and so there was a series of really outward damaging events in 2017. Arrests, bank account issues where Faye and Brittany tried to pass off other people's checks, cash them on my commercial account, and there were police involved and citations and I think they're class C felonies.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one event where, Faye told me that it was Brittany's fault. And then when I, explored it with the other people involved, I was told, no, Faye did this. This was Faye. And I remember December 2017. I went to bed one night, just the most emptied out, hollowed, broken, sad and person that I couldn't even recognize myself. And I woke up the next morning and something had shifted, almost like a major earthquake inside of me. And at that moment, I decided I'm not going to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to survive this. And that becomes kind of the in-between story between that moment and 2019 when we learned about FTD. So, questions?
I mean, let me pull out my. I remember, like, I can take myself out of this black leather chair and I can go back to being 21 in my parents' house, watching this like unravel before me, and you get, okay, this must be the worst it's gonna be because it can't get any worse than this. And then the next shoe drops and you're like, you feel so untethered and like you're so uncertain and unsettled, and part of you is like, is it me?
Yeah.
Is it the kids? Is it the environment? Like, you are searching for the reason why your loved one is completely shape-shifting. But I'm curious, like, these doctors are saying, well, you don't know, here, try this. Is Faye like, okay, I'll try it? Or is she just like, where's the Vicodin? Like, is she able to understand at this point? Like,
no,
she can't.
She
has no insight.
The anosognosia is fully in place.
Okay.
And she has very simple narratives. God has healed me. I'm fine. And the other context is we're a deeply religious family. Faye and I are both teenage converts to Mormonism or the LDS Church. Mm-hmm. And we were both very devout. Both of us served as missionaries. We met in the missionary training center and wrote for 2 years. That became the basis of our relationship. And I felt completely abandoned by God because there had been thousands and thousands of prayers and fasts, hoping for answers, pleading for just something, and nothing. It was just radio silence. And in the meantime, our family's just descending into this incredibly dysfunctional, broken place. Some of the older kids were preserved a little bit because they were far away. They weren't living at home, but they would come home and they would say, "Oh, Dad, what is wrong with Mom? This is not good." And I was somewhat, with my own children living at home, a boiled frog, right? It had been happening so incrementally, but I really was hollowed out. And so I decided in December, I've got to figure out how to do this in kind of some duality, meaning I don't want to abandon Faye because I was abandoned. I don't know if this is going to last for the rest of her life, 20, 30, 40 years. And I know I can't endure it like this. So I kind of evolved over about a 4 or 5 month period to, if I'm going to survive this, I've got to take care of Faye, but I've got to move on with my life because she doesn't love me anymore. She's lost the capacity to love me, which is not entirely true.
Right, of course.
but the capacity to love as two adults love each other in a marital relationship was gone. It was just gone. That's what FTD did to us. But I'm not going to divorce. I'm not going to divorce Faye. That's a hard thing, right? Our romantic narratives, our monogamous kind of religious orientation towards life. So eventually, I sought a second relationship, which I developed with Jennifer, my wife now. And we kind of settled in for about a year and a half of Jennifer being in my life and me trying to take care of Faye and creating I got a legal separation to protect me from all the illegal things going on and the access to my financial accounts and stuff. And there was in that year and a half, she wrote about $12,000 worth of bad checks, which is just the FTD. It's just,
yes. Right. I think this is an important piece for your story, and I would be willing to bet there's somebody out there listening going, oh, so, okay. Are we going to talk further about Jennifer down the road, or is this okay?
This is a good time to at least introduce her.
Okay.
Jennifer and I met online.
Okay.
And it was kind of one of these things where I was number 2 that day that she went to meet, and I met her at a tea shop, and I still had my wedding ring on, and she sat down, and she was a single woman who had never married, just 3 years younger than me. She worked at the Shakespeare Festival she's educated at Bucknell University, and she came west to work at the Ashland Shakespeare Festival, and she had been in theater her whole life. So we sit down, and in a few minutes, she looks at the ring on my hand and she says, "Looks like you have some unfinished business." And I said, "Yeah, it's complicated. It's really complicated." And when she found out it was LDS, her first question was, "How do you feel about gay marriage?" I mean, she was qualifying me in a hurry.
Yeah, right. She sure was.
She's like,
yeah, right.
This is an interview.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Marriage, wedding ring. Okay.
Yeah.
But
she stayed.
But she just gently slid into my life. And I think at this moment, the best thing I can tell you is a quick story. When we got Faye diagnosed with FTD in August of 2019, all my children came home for a week for us to go through Faye's stuff, kind of like you would do after somebody passes away. Because we made the decision, Faye can't stay in Medford. We don't have any family here. I have to work. And all of her medical expertise is in Utah. And the most important element that I left out is Faye has a twin sister, an identical twin. And the two of them had become estranged. And the day after Faye's diagnosis, Ray, her twin, reached out to me and said, "I would really like to try to help take care of Faye. If you can pay me to stay home, replace the income I would get up for not working. And I'll do it as long as I can, as long as we have an agreement. When it becomes too much, you'll step back in and, help." And I'm like, yeah, sign me up. I'll do whatever you want. I don't know what to do. I can't stay home. We're broke. We've been on this long journey of just spending thousands and thousands on medical stuff. And so Ray entered our life as Faye's primary caregiver for 2 years. And so back to Jennifer, the kids come home. We're going through all of Faye's stuff. And in the midst of that, Jennifer's there, and she's interfacing with my children, and they're being very kind and loving to Jennifer. And Jennifer one day picks up this 16 by 20 portrait of our family with Faye in the middle and takes it back to our place. Because by then, Jennifer has, on 24 hours notice, Jennifer says, "Move in with me. We'll set up a place for Faye." And Faye moved into the duplex that I had moved into when I downsized. And so Jennifer picks up this portrait without any of us knowing, and she takes it home and she puts it up in our room. And when I come home that night, with some of my kids are staying there, some of them we got them. I think they were all staying there in our little house. I see that picture in our bedroom and I just weep. Because who does that? So I think that's a good way to introduce the kind of person that Jennifer is. She stayed active in advocating for me to take care of Faye. Um, so
And she honored Faye, you
she,
know?
she did not try to replace Faye. And and so we lived from 2019, and I'll come back to the diagnosis in a minute. We lived from 2019 to Faye's death in January of 2023 with Jennifer in a just an unselfish support role, and my children loving Jennifer and loving their mother and accepting that this is just the way it has to be in order for us to all get through this. So back to the diagnosis. It's May 5th, 2019, and 60 Minutes runs their segment. I didn't see it because I wasn't watching much TV. But my mother, who's a registered nurse, she sees it with my sister, and she calls me that night and she said, "You need to see this segment of it's about a disease called FTD. It's on 60 Minutes, and there's one family in there, I think, and it was Amy Johnson. She didn't know her name at the time, who her husband reminds me so much of Faye." And my mother had come occasionally to visit from Alaska and spend time. And even in that year in between, she would take Faye to lunch and they would spend time together because she loved Faye. And when I watched that video, it was just like somebody reached up and turned the light on in a room that had been dark for 12 years. And because by then I've healed a little bit, I have Jennifer in my life who loves me. I'm beginning to find some capacity again. I became a really strong bulldog of an advocate for Faye. And I called the AFTD. I asked where we could go to potentially get a diagnosis. They said UCSF, University of Washington with Harborview. And I said, what about Oregon? And they said, well, there's really no place in Oregon right now that we know of that's certified. And I said, what about the University of Utah? And they said, actually, they've just recently been certified. They've got a new cognitive diseases center. So I called them. They said they don't take people more than one state away. They're a regional center. Okay. So I flew to Utah because by now Faye's in Utah at Ray's house. And I would go quarterly to see Faye and spend time with her. And I went to the University of Utah and I pleaded with them, please, we have family here. Faye's settled here. I need some place to go where we can get the support. And they said, well, actually, I'm not correct in this, and I'm sorry for the. Faye was still in Medford at that point, and so they said, I tell you what, Shane, if you gather her records and send them to us, we'll review them. If we think it justifies a visit and an examination, we'll call you. And I kind of left thinking I'll probably never hear from them because we'd had an earlier experience with a epilepsy specialist who just refused to see Faye. And that was in Sacramento. So I come home and almost 3 weeks to the day later, I get that call. Shane, we'll see her July 2nd, or I know it's July 3rd, actually. So I arranged to fly Faye to Utah, and my daughter Jordan and Ray picked her up. And they went with her to that first appointment. And it was, I did a lot of prep work. I had pages of notes that I'd made on her behaviors and the things that I observed. Those went with her. But Michelle Sorway, the physician at the time, who was a gerontologist who had worked together with a notable University of Michigan FTD specialist who's now retired, she called me and she said, Shane, we got a lot of work to do, but this looks like classic FTD.
Wow. And did you say aha, or did you break down?
I broke down. And from, the 3rd until the mid-August, they did the MRIs, they did the neuropsych evaluations again, but this time from the perspective of knowledge. And Jennifer and I took a trip to Alaska, and we were with my mother, and we were sitting in a restaurant when I got a MyChart, or whatever the University of Utah uses, notification. Yep. And I opened it. It was the neuropsych's notes. and I read his clinical analysis, it was kind of like the final vindication that we knew what was going on. And I just sat at that. We were at this remote place near Alyeska, and I just sat at the table and cried because we finally knew what Faye couldn't tell us. And then everything started to get better. Ray entered the picture. We kept her in Ray's home. I would go regularly. My daughter, I got guardianship of Faye and made Jordan, my oldest daughter, who lived close by, her co-guardian, because feet on the ground, right? Eyes on the street.
Always, yeah.
And it took the burden away from Ray from having to make hard decisions. COVID showed up 2 years later. Both Ray and her husband, Gary, who also was very helpful for Faye, both got COVID. Gary was hospitalized, and I got that text in the morning in September. I remember it. Shane, I can't do this anymore.
No.
And so I was on the airplane that afternoon to Utah, and I have no idea what we're going to do because Jordan had made a run at trying to care for Faye, and it created so much chaos. It was just harmful to have her.
She had a young family at that
time. Yeah, she had 2 children. Yeah, it was overwhelming. But the presumption I had going to Utah was that I can't afford memory care, and I don't have long-term care insurance, and so I don't know what I'm going to do, but I got to go. I got to figure something out. The gift of Utah was memory care was half of what it costs in Oregon. Okay. And when I found that out, I was living with Jennifer. We were splitting a $550 house payment. I could live on $1,600 a month, and I could send the rest of the money to Utah to pay for her memory care. So then we crossed that threshold, which is so painful for a family to have to make that hard decision, right? And Jordan and I, we chose the facility, which Ray recommended because there was a connection there. And I set up the financial thing, knowing that for a while I could pay out of pocket and then I'd have to draw down my retirement, which I did. And we had that terrible, horrible day where you take your loved one in there and she doesn't want to stay. And it's just exhausting. But within a week, Faye was happy there. And what we learned was Faye did much better there than she did anywhere else. She had her own private room. There were long hallways where what she had done as a driver when she lost her driving privileges, she just walked. She paced all day long. She walked 5 or 6 miles a day in her care facility. And it was beautiful. And it was perfect for her. No care facility is perfect, but this one was really good. And I could afford it. When Faye died, I had 3 months of the equivalent of care left in my retirement account. That's all I had left. And it was, we'd all go to see her. I'd go for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. My business afforded me that ability. And I'd just walk with her. And she liked to go for drives, but within about an hour, she'd ask me, can we go back to my home now? And we'd go back to the care facility. And all of us, Ray, Gary, Jennifer, my daughter, Jordan, my other children, we came to realize that the care facility was the best situation. And Jordan, Faye really, really did as well as a person dying from FTD and ALS can do in that situation.
How long did she live in the facility before she passed?
I got to think about it. We put her in September of 2021, and she died in January of 2023. So that's 16, 17 months.
And how old was she when she passed away?
60. She had just turned 66. In fact, tomorrow, the 25th, is Faye's birthday. And she died on the 28th of January. So, which was 3 weeks shy of what would have been our 40th anniversary. There's so many.
Yes.
So many elements.
So the decision to place her ended up being the the bridge that kind of kept everybody afloat. Like
Yeah.
you got to be with Jennifer and the sister. Like I picture, even though it's like mucky and it's been
Yeah.
a rough road, like the beauty in all of these different lives coming together to rally and support Faye and you
Yeah.
was, I'm sure, looking back, like extremely touching that everybody kind of had their role. The nursing facility had their role. Like you guys were a team.
Yeah. It was such a complete circle back to love and support. And it was a village.
Yeah.
It was way over my head to be able to handle by myself. And in many ways, Jennifer's love and fortification made me such a better advocate for
Oh,
Faye,
yeah.
you know,
Well, when you
because I
feel
would,
supported, you can support someone.
yeah, yeah. And, there's a couple things I want to say in this department because I'm an expert only on my version of FTD. I think women generally have more capacity to be caregivers. That's a broad generalization that doesn't always apply. But I accept that many people could have done this better than me. I just only know what I went through and what my limit became. I didn't even know what my limit was until we got there.
Right.
Um, so I don't judge or pretend to know. All I know is our journey,
Mm-hmm.
our version. And I'm so privileged. I'm so lucky. And people that are listening to this that are struggling and really feel like they're drowning are going to say, you're so fortunate that you had people that loved you, including your children, and supported you and advocated for you while you were trying to cope with and advocate for your wife. And you had Jennifer, this extraordinary human being who just showed up and lifted. That's so privileged. And my heart hurts for those that don't have these things or aren't able to find them. And so, that's the journey. And now I'm the ambiguous and anticipatory grief that arrives early and stays long has now been transitioned into real meaningful grief with the loss of this human that loved me so deeply and then couldn't love me anymore, and how it broke me and how I failed in many respects, and how I have grace for myself because I don't know how a human with my background and etc. could have done it any differently. I still love Faye. And circling back to Jennifer, so we have this beautiful celebration of life at an atrium in a nursery. It's this beautiful like glass house filled with plants. And we all come together. And the night this ends, I got an Airbnb because we had 20 some people just on my side of the family, and we can't fit in
Right.
my daughter's house. And it's been a day of just, what those events are like when you're,
Oh my gosh. So much
yeah,
emotion and
Yeah. And you're like
social
raw at the
interaction,
end.
and your
Yeah.
brain can't process with the speed at which
Yeah,
things are
yeah, it's a
happening.
lot. Yeah, you're
yeah.
dizzy. Yeah.
And it's late. It's like 11:30 at night, and I go upstairs to get in bed, and Jennifer's in bed, and she's very strong. I would say that Jennifer is a classic stoic, right? And her cheeks are wet, and I can barely see, but I can see the glistening and the little bit of light in the room. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I'm so sorry you lost your Faye. I'm so sorry you lost your Faye." And like I tell people, that's all you really need to know about Jennifer. Tells you everything, you know.
Are we flying to Oregon to go hang out with them? Or...
Are we going to go see the atrium?
Yeah, like I want to be with Shane.
I want
and
Jennifer to love me the way she's very loving.
Yes,
I feel like even though you say she's so, I feel like she needs to take care of me too. Probably. Let me sign up to getting care from Jennifer.
I have a question that I really wanted to ask you. Maybe I should have sent the question to you before, because this is something I've been wondering about your journey in particular. And that is, when you go through 10 plus years of chaos of like the ups and downs and the changes of the behavior, and you're seeing this person change so much and they do things that hurt you so deeply, but then you have the answer.
The answer of why they've done that.
Yeah, the answer as to why this has been happening.
Yes.
But you've lived in 10 plus years of that reality, of the heartbreak of saying, please, will you do this for me? Please show up to the marriage counseling, like, and all that. You live in that disappointment for such a long period of time before you have the answer as to why it's happening. Are you able to like wipe the slate clean, if that makes sense?
Like, are you able to move forward and be like, well, it was just the FTD.
Yeah,
she didn't mean it.
Like, how do you
She's not trying to hurt
reconcile?
me.
Yes. Yeah. Like the things that happened during that time, are you able to forgive because now you know? Does that make sense?
That's such a good question. There's nothing to forgive, but the wounds are real.
Mm-hmm.
The wounds are not, you can't just with the swipe of a hand or the intellectual understanding of FTD make all the wounds as if they never happened. The wounds are real.
Mm-hmm.
The mistakes are real. And so from just my vantage point, I have to live with the duality of all of it.
Yeah.
And my children and Jennifer, and accepting that we all found a way to advocate for one another, and most specifically for Faye in the midst of all that, is a kind of beautiful story filled with just wounds and tragedy and harm and hurtfulness. And you know, one of the outcomes of this is my children still struggle. I'm the legal guardian for my daughter who has made multiple suicide attempts and is struggling for her own life. And a big part of that is Faye's journey. And so we just learned to live with the complexity and the nuance and the heaviness, but also the profound love and understanding and gifts that we all gave each other, and that ultimately, you know, Faye gave us.
That's beautiful. It's very bittersweet.
And it's okay. It's okay.
You're accepting all of it.
Yeah.
If you didn't have this, then you wouldn't get that.
Right.
But it's also not just transactional, right?
Right.
Because I think we explain a lot of trauma and difficulty in life away by saying, well, you had this experience, so you could learn that.
Right.
I always tell people that come to me with, you know, that the way you described it is good, but a lot of people just say it to kind of turn off the pain, right?
Sure, of course. Yeah, I mean, there's what it is. Right.
I'm glad you know I wasn't trying to do that. I just wanted to know how you process it. Yeah.
It's an insightful question. And I think that the truth is the value of what we learned was never worth what we went through. The lessons are profound. Mm-hmm. They're beautiful in their own right. But if I could go back and look at this, you know, up front with full context and knowledge, I wouldn't agree to the deal. I just wouldn't.
Right.
It did too much harm. And I think that's the nature of really, really difficult events in our lives, is we learn not to oversimplify or to dismiss others whose pain we don't understand or whose journey has been so difficult. That's one of the things I've accepted, is now when I see somebody that's gone through or is still going through a really, really protracted, long, difficult illness or mental health struggle or all of the above, I realize I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea.
I think you are an amazing speaker, and I'm curious if assume there's another spouse out there either starting their journey or, grasping at the straws, trying to figure out like what is happening to my husband or my wife. I'm wondering if there's like one or two little gold nugget pieces of wisdom you have after. I would say this is probably the longest we've ever somebody trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Yes. Like through that, and then through making some of the decisions that you probably didn't think you'd ever have to make.
Right.
Like, are there any pieces of advice you can pass on to someone else?
Find your people as quickly as possible. And what I mean by that, we were in isolated Southern Oregon with no FTD understanding, but the AFTD, at least had an online support group.
Mm-hmm.
And I found people that were fellow travelers, spouses that were kind of moving through this at the same phase.
Okay.
In 2024, Jennifer and I flew to Minneapolis, and we spent the day with Amy Johnson. And we listened to her story. And then there were 4 other FTD spouses that joined us that day: Erica Largent, Heidi Pavick, Rosemary Spielman. I'm afraid I'm going to leave somebody out. I think
Was
that's
Kim
it.
there?
No, we went,
Stassa?
and then I drove 3,000 miles over the next 2 weeks, going from place to place, meeting the people that would be later we would come to call ourselves the Kintsugi group, after the Japanese pottery that's broken and then glued back together.
Wow. What?
And those people, Kimberly was on my map, and so we stopped and saw her and Bob, and we shared our stories. And I ended up in, Jennifer had to fly home because we're taking care of her mother with late stage dementia in our home. And so Jennifer flew home, and I continued down into the Carolinas and met Amber Spear and spent a day with Libba Adams, and then ended with Lauren Connor in Jacksonville, and then flew back to Utah to see Faye's headstone, which we had ordered, and finally it had arrived. Yeah, find your people, because we can't do this alone. And my people became the spouses that were having a similar journey, who could speak with full vestment, if you will, or vesting of what this experience does to a marriage, to a family, to our finances, to our lives, to our careers. So that's the first golden. And I would say the second one is we have to eventually advocate for our own survival. We have to do it, because Rachel, you mentioned it. If we don't take care of ourselves, we become empty vessels, and we can't take care of anybody else.
Right.
And I went there. I experienced that. And it was only Jennifer and my children and my village that helped me recover enough to become Faye's fire again, Yeah. So those are the two. Find your people, and find them quickly. Don't look for your advocates and your intimate life sharers amongst people that have not had this experience, because there's just no way they can understand it. And then give yourself permission to survive. Advocate for yourself. Choose to be okay. And that's such a difficult part of this, because you put the oxygen mask on you.
Right.
We have all these simple phrases. The actual doing of it is the most difficult experience in our lives when we truly love somebody else. And so those would be my two.
So you're 2 years-ish into the real grief part, not the anticipatory stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Is it something you were prepared for? Do you think it's like, yeah, of course I'm supposed to feel this way? Has anything shocked you through this grief journey? This part, the end, after the end, not the watching it dwindle.
I think I'm still doing it, and it's feral. It's feral.
That is such a good word.
I can't.
So are my kids.
I feel that in my gut.
Yeah, you have anger, then you're crying, then you're over here and you're mad, and then you're taking all their clothes out of the closet, and then you're crying, and then it's out of control.
And Anderson Cooper has this wonderful podcast series on
Yes. Is
grief
this
where
all there is?
yeah, it's beautiful. And when I took the journey in 2024, so it'll be 3 years in a couple of days since Faye died, I listened to his podcast full time as I was driving that 3,000 miles. And now I'm listening to it again. And I realized just recently there are still things that I haven't uncovered. There are still parts of my reconciliation to Faye and everything that happened that has yet to occur. And I can't control it. I can't schedule it. I can't just go take a class and read a book and it'll happen.
Right.
It'll well up in me probably in the most inopportune moment.
Always.
But I welcome it. And by the way, the term comes from Francis Weller's book, this idea that grief is feral. It's not mine.
Okay.
Oh, I'm like, wow, Shane's also a poet.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think Shane
No.
is.
Yeah, I do
but,
too. Very good speaker.
But that is such a, like, I feel so seen now.
It's feral.
I think, just not to insert too much of my journey here, but my mom's journey was 4 years from diagnosis to death. And I am now just memorialized 5 years since her passing. And I know everybody's different, but this 5-year mark is the first time I have felt like my feet are on solid ground. Like my nervous system has calmed. I'm not feeling like I'm being attacked by a bear.
Fight or flight. Yeah. Like
I have my family in a flow. Like it truly. And then I'm like, what's going to happen now? Because I feel normal again.
Yeah.
But it has taken me 5 years to like recover. I know you don't never really recover, but
to feel steady.
yeah. And so I think in year 3 to still feel feral.
Yeah. And like
That
you said, it
tracks.
comes.
Yeah.
You
And
feel it
sometimes
bubbling
you're
up.
fine.
You're like, I'm at the grocery store now. Like, we're really just going to start crying near the strawberries, huh? All right, let's go. Like,
Just to give a shout out to Jennifer, though, like, I know I don't know her, but it feels like she probably gives you the space to feel it, to process it, to get into it, to be feral, you know? And that's the only way through.
Yeah, you can't walk around it. So
yeah, she's having the photo of Faye. She's talking about her. It's not just like that
away.
chapter's closed and now we're going on to this.
Yeah,
it's integrating. That's what you say, right? You need to integrate it.
Yeah, very beautiful. Good job.
That's such a beautiful reflection. And the fight or flight thing, Maria, it's still fully inside of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of it's from my childhood trauma, but a lot of it, and my need to control things to be okay. But it was really enlarged by FTD. So I just want to say that, and I also want to say, Faye, for the last 4 years of her life, she introduced me to everybody as, "This is my husband Shane, who's having an affair."
Oh, okay.
Hundreds of people I was introduced that way to. And I just learned to smile and say it's true. And you know what? What's amazing is the shame left quickly. And I just learned to accept this was Faye's reality. And it was Faye's pain. And it was, something that those wounds were real. The damage to our marriage was real. I couldn't just drop Jennifer and go back. Too much ground had been covered, but I could still love Faye. And part of my feral grieving is fully coming full circle to how beautiful Faye was. She was. You've seen the pictures, but her human spirit was extraordinary. She was authentic and genuine. She didn't gossip about people. She was a fierce defender of the underdog. She was deeply, deeply intelligent, even though her trauma of her childhood made it difficult for her to get a good education. But I was, I'm going to end with a letter that was the first letter she ever gave me, and her little story about trees. And it's in beautiful script. And she was an artist. She loved her children with all of her heart. she never wanted to be anything more than just a wholly devoted mother. And her children mostly know that, even after FTD. There was a period with my son Enoch, who was the youngest, and he was the last one at home, where Faye began to blame him for almost everything that didn't happen right in her life. And I sent you a photo of Faye's neuroquant brain scan, where it shows these deep gaps between, the lobes, the folds of her brain. And that's like this metaphorical disconnection between a good, healthy brain and a deeply damaged brain. But it is represented in the relationships in our family. And for a long time, Enoch and his mother were at odds because, Faye had a collection of $2 bills. And for a long time, there were hundreds of them, and they were going away. And what was happening was Faye was spending them. But then when she would count them again, she would say, well, Enoch must be taking my money. And she would accuse Enoch. And until I finally witnessed her pull those out and take them, I'm like, okay, I see what's going on. And this is all pre-FTD. I was in that triangular difficulty of a teenager and a mother accusing the child of, and Enoch suffered so much. But when Faye went into the care home, there was like this beautiful shift. And Enoch would come, and it was really sad. It was hard for him to visit. You hear people say, it was just too sad, I couldn't do it. But if somebody else would go, he would go. And she would come up to him and put her hands on his cheeks and say, you're so beautiful. And he would say, it's so sad, Dad. It's just so sad.
Yes.
But our family was infused with love, and really so much of that fountain of love began with Faye. It was sourced in Faye. And I think as my children heal and grieve, they're coming to accept that they have rich and beautiful gifts from their mother, talents. Reading Faye's writing from 43 years ago, she can write then how I've learned to write now. She was so good and so illustrative and so beautiful with her language, which of course FTD decimated, right?
Of course.
So I don't have enough superlatives to describe who Faye was, but I know how I felt when I lost that.
Yeah. Yes. It sounds like she was a good mama. I hear all of these things that she was, but how do you think she would want to be remembered?
As somebody who just loved with all her heart. She was superlative.
I can't wait to hear your letter. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Set it up for us.
Yeah. So we were in the MTC. I was there a month before her. I was learning Korean, getting ready to go to Korea. She came in to learn Navajo, which incidentally is a more difficult language than Korean, by the way.
Wow.
I could easily teach her phraseology and she would repeat it back. And then she'd try to teach me things and she'd say, well, that's not quite right. She used to always, when she was in Arizona and later on in her life, when she'd write me a letter, she would always end it with "Ayoananishne," which is "I love you." And I was leaving, and I was, when you're missionaries, you're not supposed to be dating, you're not supposed to be connecting. And there was about 15 young men for every young woman in the MTC at that time.
Oh boy.
and so we just kind of connected from afar, but really didn't have any formal connection. And as I was going through the metal detector back then, before TSA and everything, to get on the plane, I had to leave at 4 a.m. and I thought, I should have at least got her address. I should have at least given her my address. I should have at least had a conversation with her. One of the other women that was going to Korea with me reached in her purse when she was set it down on the metal detector's table. She said, "Oh, Elder Cunningham, there was a sister that wanted you to have this."
And it was from Faye.
And it was Faye's letter. And part of it was, kind of talking to me about my missionary work. But the back part was about a kind of poetic treatise she had written about trees. And that's what I want to read. I'm going to shift here a little bit because it's going to,
Okay.
I got to build.
Yes.
It's beautiful, beautiful script. I mean, that's a lost art, a calligraphy,
Yes,
right?
yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
And she says, is it okay if I read it?
Yes. Yes.
She says, trees are my example. All trees reach upward toward heaven. Is that coincidence? Can they be praising God? They lose their warm coat of color in the autumnal season. I wonder, is it because they need to be cleansed, to be stripped even to the bark of unwanted blemish? A cold, hard, brisk winter interrupts, and they're left bare to feel the cold, frosty air as the crystal-like snow rests for a while, weighting their limbs down with its burden. They try to endure, yet some lose faith, and in the distance one can hear echoing crackles and thumps. The snow is lifted and blown steadily away as the wind swiftly in its tempest carries it far into the spring to a virgin new life. Spring arrives after long waiting months, and a scent purer than honey blossoms in the air. The new growth appears, eagerly accepting its duty, each year growing more and more beautiful and much stronger. The flowers begin to bloom. Buds appear, ruffling the grass. Anticipating the season plays with excitement, demonstrating its joy for the chance to begin once again. The summer is short, yet the trees contemplate their growth and the varying seasons each had with their own trial and beauty. They accept it as a way of life. Fall invades the summer, and once again, with a cool, fresh, brisk touching of freedom, while dancing leaves array the surrounding in vivid color. Trees are my example of faith. Seasons are my trials. The Lord is my rock and my salvation. Through all those seasons, past years, while their limbs still reach high into the sky, always without fail, praising the Almighty God forever and ever. Faye Ludwig.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode.
If you want to learn more about Remember Me, you can go to remembermeftd.com.
We also love getting new Instagram followers, and you can follow us at Remember Me Podcast.
We're also building a space just for you at the Remember Me Foundation. For more information or to donate, visit remembermefoundation.org.
This podcast is produced by Maria Kent Beers
and Rachel Martinez.
And the beautiful music you hear is a song called So Damn Lucky by Bailey Kent.